The Rangers have an almost entirely new pitching rotation. So on today's show, it's full of risks. We're going to break down the risks and rewards of the Rangers' new pitching staff. All that and more on this episode of Locked On Rangers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Rangers, your daily Texas Rangers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are locked onto the Texas Rangers. I'm Bryce Patrick, a cripplingly addicted Texas Rangers fan since 2010, the founder and host for all 4 seasons of this Locked On Rangers podcast. Thank you all so much for making Locked On Rangers your first listen every single day. If you're not already, you can follow me on Twitter at Bryce Patrick. You can follow the show at Locked On Rangers and subscribe on YouTube, where the best way you can help grow the show is to comment any single thing below. On today's show, we are breaking down the risks and rewards of this Texas Rangers pitching rotation. It is significantly improved from last year, but it is not without its risks. The Rangers could have one of the best rotations in all of baseball, but I don't think there's a scenario in which they have one of the worst. They're, I think, at the very worst, going to be the middle of the pack in terms of their rotation. But there is a lot of upside and, like I said, a lot of risk. So let's get into the risk. I'm going to be ranking who is the riskiest, who has the highest potential reward, and the likely outcome of what these pitchers' seasons are going to look like in 2023. Let's start with, obviously, Jacob freaking deGrom, as all of these are going to, because it's all about Jacob deGrom this season, and for the next few years, it's going to be a lot about Jacob deGrom. The risks, well, he had 2 seasons where he barely pitched. He didn't pitch at least 100 innings in either of the last 2 seasons, and in 2020, the last full season he pitched was an abbreviated 60-game season, which he was fantastic, finished 3rd in Cy Young voting, but again, just was not fully healthy the last couple of years, was an all-star, finished top 10 in Cy Young voting in 2021, still only pitched 92 innings that year. Last year, he only pitched 64 and a third innings, did pitch 1 game in the postseason, but he had 2 pretty significant injuries. He had a shoulder injury that caused him to miss 118 days this past season, and he had an arm injury that was related to, or the elbow. I don't know why it's listed as arm here, but it basically was a little bit of elbow concerns as well in 2021, caused him to miss 78 days. Then the rest of his career, like I've talked about many times before, he has been fairly healthy. The most times he missed for a single injury before 2021, which, by the way, there was another injury as well in 2021. There was a back injury also that caused him to miss 16 days. But outside of those 3 injuries, the most time he had missed for a single injury was an elbow injury that caused him to miss 12 days back in 2016. So for the most part, he's been extremely healthy in his career. In 2016, he pitched 148 innings, and outside of his rookie year, outside of the last 3 years as well, that's the least that he's pitched. So he is feeling very, very healthy. There was this quote from deGrom back a little bit after his introductory press conference, or maybe it was around that week. But he said the goal is to go out there and just make 30 plus starts every year. He said the injury in spring training of 2022 was kind of a weird one. It was a stress reaction in my scapula, but once I came back, I felt great. So the goal is to make 30 plus starts here for the next 5 plus years. So that's great. He has said he has reason to believe that he doesn't think that this is going to be a particularly bad injury moving forward in terms of how it's going to affect him and how it's going to affect his health. Meister said that he said, look, when this heals, you're going to be completely fine. That's what deGrom said later on in that interview. He said, and when I came back, I felt great. And as we saw, I mean, he was fantastic down the stretch. The numbers aren't entirely super flattering. He had an ERA over 3 for the first time since 2017. But again, that's basically because he was rehabbing at the big league level. The Mets were in the thick of it, in the hunt. They were trying to win 100 plus games, which they did end up doing. They were trying to win the NL East, which they came up just shy of doing, but they still made the playoffs and gave the Padres a run for their money. And ended up losing in that 3-game wild card series, but it was no fault of Jacob deGrom's. He was absolutely electric against one of the best lineups in baseball in that playoff start. And if you're wanting to dream on what it's going to be like for deGrom to be in a Rangers uniform and possibly a playoff game, then go look at that game, because it's just some absolutely phenomenal pitching. So those are the injury concerns. I mean, for Jacob deGrom, he is getting a little bit older. He is 35 years old, but like I've talked about many times before, he didn't start pitching until full-time until I think it was his junior year, maybe it was his sophomore year in college, but he was a shortstop in college at his small little school, Stetson University in Florida, in DeLand, Florida. So there's not a whole lot of miles on his arm as much as you'd be concerned with somebody else who is at his age. He's not turning 35 until about the middle of the season in June 19th. So he's still got some time. Next on this list, we have Nathan Eovaldi. The main concern with him is, well, for all these guys, it's pretty much injuries. He had a back injury this year that caused him to miss 38 days. He also caused him to miss, a neck issue caused him to miss 38 days this year. A back injury that caused him to miss 37 days. I guess 2022. I'm still not used to it being 2023 just yet. But one of the main concerns that I had about him coming back from that is that his velocity and his fastball dropped off pretty significantly, and that was one of the things that he relied on a whole lot in 2021 when he had his absolutely phenomenal year. His fastball averaged 99 miles an hour, which was way up there in 2021, and then in 2021 versus in 2022, it was just, I'm looking at Jacob deGrom's numbers. Those are different. And in 2021, Nathan Eovaldi's fastball averaged 97 miles an hour, which was definitely up there. It was in the 87th percentile. Then when you move up to 2022, it was down just a tick at 96 miles an hour, but that would drop it all the way to the 70th percentile. His spin rate is in the bottom half of baseball, so not a whole lot of spin on that. Does get some good extension, but the curveball isn't spinning a whole bunch either. So those are some of my main concerns for him. For Heaney, stop me if you heard this before, but it's definitely injuries. Missed a lot of time last year, 61 days on the IL. First time for his shoulder injury, then 34 more days later on in the season. Only pitched, I believe it was 72 and 2/3 innings last year. Did have a 3.10 ERA and some crazy high strikeout rates, but those are the main concerns with him. I don't think he's going to necessarily go back to being the pitcher that he was, but he's only had one season with 150 plus innings in his career, so those injuries are a real concern. But if the Rangers can get some length out of him, some health, then they are in a pretty good spot. Jon Gray, injuries and inconsistency. We saw a 2-month stretch where he was absolutely phenomenal in June and July. He was the best Rangers pitcher in those 2 months, and yes, Martin Perez, who still had a great season, was still in the rotation at that point, but we've seen a lot of injuries, a lot of inconsistency from Jon Gray. He missed 42 days with the oblique strain late in the season. That really put a hamper on the Rangers, really made it very difficult. He also had a MCL issue, put him on the IL for 12 days, a finger blister that put him on the IL for 10 days after his first start. Came back for one start, then had the knee issue. So we saw him miss quite a bit of time, only through 120 innings, I believe it was last year, 127 innings, and has only had 3 seasons of 150 innings in his major league career. So hoping that he can stay healthy as well. And with Martin Perez, there's just some regression concerns of how the defense will play with these new rules, how these ground ball pitchers will be affected. Some people concerned about, is he going to be able to repeat a 196 inning, a career high in strikeouts, a career low in ERA. I think he's maybe not going to be the exact same pitcher, but I think some of the changes that he made are definitely, there's definitely some reason for skepticism, but also a lot of reason for optimism. Coming up, we're going to look at some of the potential rewards for these guys who has the highest ceiling outside of Jacob deGrom, obviously, and where those stack up. But first, this episode is brought to you by Built Bar. If you're looking for a delicious treat, but you don't want all the fat and calories, then you have got to try yourself a Built Bar. We just got through the holidays, and I know that my goal is to eat a little bit healthier this year. And if you're like me, you want to eat healthier, but you don't want to compromise on taste, then man, I have got just the thing for you. You have got to try yourself some Built Bars. They come in all kinds of unbelievable flavors, like churro, peanut butter brownie, coconut, almond. They're also covered in 100% real chocolate. They make them taste so good for you, you won't think that they're a protein bar. you think you're eating a candy bar, but you are eating something that is absolutely fantastic for you. Now you don't have to wait around for a box of Built Bars. You used to be able to get your orders at built.com and wait in the mail for them to get shipped to you. You can still do that, but you can also pick them up at your local Walmart or your local Sam's Club. So head over there, get yourself a box. You've got to try yourself some Built Bars. You can thank me later. Now let's take a look at the possible rewards from these starting pitchers. According to Fangraphs, they project Jacob deGrom to make 29 starts, 172 innings with a 2.64 ERA, a 5.5 WAR, and 236 strikeouts. That's absolutely nuts. I mean, you look at some of the things that deGrom has done the last couple of years, the last 3 years in particular. He's gotten 6 innings per start the last 3 years, 1.2 strikeouts per 9. Say he gets 30 starts, and if you're looking at the average of what he's done the last 3 years, that would be 180 innings, 218 strikeouts, 6.63 baseball reference WAR, and 7.67 Fangraphs WAR. Absolutely fantastic. If you look at the overall, what he's done the last 3 seasons, 38 starts, 224 and a third innings, a 2.05 ERA, 352 strikeouts, 8.4 B WAR, 9.7 F WAR. Absolutely crazy stuff. I've talked about it a million times. I mean, looking at his baseball savant page is just, it's absolutely erotic stuff. Just absolutely erotic. And if you want something even dirtier, go look at the 2021 tab and just see how insanely high up he is in literally everything. He gets phenomenal extension, fastball velocity, fastball spin rate, whiff rate, doesn't walk anybody, doesn't allow any barrels, doesn't allow anybody to do anything at all. He's got 4 absolutely unbelievably good pitches, and he really only needs 2, but he throws in the other 2 just for funsies because he freaking can, because he's Jacob deGrom. This guy is just absolutely insane, and I am so ready for the first grainy image and or video of Jacob deGrom actually wearing Rangers stuff. I mean, not in a press conference scenario, just him throwing a bullpen and hearing the nasty sound of it hitting a catcher's glove and possibly bruising their palm, because that's how ridiculously hard he throws. Very much looking forward to that. He's going to be so good. I'm so excited. And all the teams in baseball are going to realize how much they screwed up by letting the Rangers get this guy. Next, I'm going to go into Nathan Eovaldi. Some of his strengths are similar to Jacob deGrom. Obviously, he is not deGrom, but the things that he does well are also the thing that deGrom does well. He has a really, really nasty fastball. He has a great ability to strike guys out, and he does not walk guys either. That is some of the things that I think the Rangers were targeting specifically in both of these guys. They really like guys. Modern analytics really love guys who strike a bunch of guys out, who don't allow a lot of home runs, and who don't give up a whole bunch of walks, and that is what these guys do very, very well. He led the American League in 2021, Eovaldi, that is, in walks per 9 at 1.7. That was when he finished 4th in Cy Young voting, made it his first and only All-Star appearance, also finished 15th in MVP voting, had 195 strikeouts, and I knew that Fangraphs would like his season a lot more than Baseball Reference did, especially in terms of WAR. I believe that year he had a 4.5 WAR according to Baseball Reference, but according to Fangraphs in 2021, Nathan Eovaldi had a 5.7 Baseball Reference WAR, which was by far the best in his career by 2.4. The best he had before that was in Miami in 2014 at 3.3. So Fangraphs really, really loved what Eovaldi was doing in 2021. Now, we look at Andrew Heaney and why the Rangers signed him. He's got a just crazy high. His baseball savant page kind of reminds me of Joey Gallo, and I mean that as a compliment because there's a lot of red and a lot of really red and a lot of really blue. So the things that he does well is he does not walk guys either. He has a crazy high whiff rate, strikeout rate, chase rate, and his fastball just spins like absolute crazy. His expected batting average against was also pretty darn good, but the things that he does not do well is he gets hit hard. He gets hit really, really hard. So, his barrel rate is in the bottom 4% of baseball. His average exit velocity, bottom 2% of baseball. And the hard hit percentage in the bottom 1% of baseball. So he just needs to stop, leaving hangers right over the plate, and then he'll just be golden. Just stop doing that, and you'll be a whole lot better. Just throw all the stuff out of the zone where guys are swinging and missing at it like crazy, and don't give up the easy dingers. The thing that Jon Gray does really well, I mean, we saw it in June and July. He is also a guy who, I'm belaboring the point at this point, but the Rangers like guys who don't give up a whole bunch of walks. He gives up a few more than the other guys, only 2.8 walks per nine this year, 3.0 for his career, and 9.5 Ks per nine this year. Those are the things he does really well. We saw that in June and July when he was just on an absolute heater. He was healthy. He looked fantastic. It's just about being able to repeat that stuff for Jon Gray and Martin Perez. We saw what he was able to do last year, that his big strength is consistency and not needing crazy good stuff. I mean, he's got decent stuff, and he knows how to use it, and he trusts it now. And I think it was a lot of mental adjustment last year for him, more than, figuring something out. I mean, he threw the four-seamer a whole lot less, and outside of that, there wasn't a whole lot of changes in his repertoire or delivery or anything like that. He's just like, I've been in the big leagues for 10 years now, so I deserve to be here, and I'm going to go kick some freaking butt, and that's exactly what he did. So I'm not as concerned about the drop-off with him as I am with a guy who does have some really, really nice stuff in Eovaldi. I think that there might be a little bit more of a fall-off from Eovaldi this year than Martin Perez, from both of their respective peaks coming in the last couple of years. Coming up, we're going to look at my overall ranking of the riskiness / ceiling and the likely outcomes for these guys and where I think they stack up in this Rangers rotation. But first, this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The midway point of the NBA season is here, and now is the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. Yeah, you heard me, $1,000. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, and super easy to use. That bonus bet, that's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Then you can bet on everything from the money line to point scores and threes drained as well. Plus, FanDuel even lets you combine your bets for a chance at bigger payouts with the same game parlay. So don't miss a chance to get your no sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Now, let's take a look at the rankings for these guys according to me. Let's start with the riskiness of these guys. Every pitcher has risks, every single one of them, even if you are the safest bet known to man. The human body was not built to hurl baseballs 90 to 100 miles an hour, 100 to 110 times every 5 days against competitive hitters. The body was not designed for that. So there's all kinds of inherent risks in just terms of being a pitcher at all. But obviously some of these guys have higher risks than others. I think the most risky is Andrew Heaney. Heaney's got an extensive injury history. I mean, he's even coming off an injury-plagued season, and he can also get absolutely shellacked by right-handed hitters. I think there is a lot of inherent risks there. I don't think that he is going to provide the most value of anybody in this Rangers rotation. I think he might end up providing the least. I still think it's a good sign, but I am definitely by far the most concerned about his injury history and his risks. Second on this list, I have Nathan Eovaldi. I mean, I talked about the velocity falling off last year. That is kind of a major red flag. He is going to be 33 this season. He actually just turned 33 this week on actually I think it was yesterday, on Monday. So happy birthday to him. But yeah, he's age 33 and 1 whole day. So I have concerns about that. I have concerns with how he looked towards the back half of last year, and obviously he has got a fairly extensive injury history. Not a whole lot of seasons where he's pitched 180 plus innings, which I think the Rangers are really going to rely on him to do. He's only done that twice in his 11-year big league career. And that doesn't include it would have been 12 years if he pitched at all in 2017, which he did not. He missed the entirety of the 2017 season due to injury. He pitched 190. He was literally 1 out away from 200 innings in 2014. Literally 1 out away. I bet that would drive me absolutely insane. And then he had 182 and a third innings in his All-Star season in 2021 with Boston. So those concerns, the velocity plus the injuries, make me a little skeptical, but again, it's only a 2-year deal worth $34 million. There are a bunch of options and incentives if they do keep him healthy, if he does stay healthy and absolutely dominates like we have seen him do at the big league level. But I'm pretty skeptical with those concerns. Next, I have Jon Gray. Yeah, I have Jon Gray as a more risky guy than Jacob deGrom because Gray's got a lot of health concerns. He's got those recurring blisters that caused him to miss time early in the season. He had the MCL injury. He had the oblique injury. Like, it just feels like it's kind of always something. He has never pitched 180 innings in his career. 172 and a third is his career high back in 2018. So yeah, I definitely have some concerns about his ability to stay healthy. He is going to be 31, so he's a little bit younger than Eovaldi, and I think also younger than Heaney as well. Not by much, but still, that's what matters. He is technically younger and has fewer big league innings on his arm. But again, the inconsistency is another concern with him. Obviously, next on this list, I have Jacob deGrom because he hasn't pitched more than 100 innings in a season since 2019, yada, yada, yada. You know the whole drill, but he's got a very strong track record of doing so when he is healthy. And I mean, he would have pitched probably 200 innings if there was a full season in 2020. We don't know, so we can't say that. But he did pitch 92 whole innings in 2021 and was just absolutely godlike. I mean, people forget, in 15 starts, which is basically half season, he had a 108 ERA. 1.08 for 92 innings and 146 strikeouts. The guy is just absolutely insane when he is on the mound. And even while rehabbing half of his starts basically at the big league level in 2022, he had a 3.08 ERA and 102 strikeouts in 64 and a third innings. The guy is just absolutely insane. And I know the risks are there, and he is going to be 35. He is the oldest one in this rotation, but like, he's Jacob freaking deGrom. I am more concerned about the other guys, mainly because maybe it's the ceiling influencing my thoughts here. But yeah, and then the least risky is obviously Martin Perez. Like, we know what he can do. There is the chance that he regresses to be more like who he was earlier on in his career. I mean, he lost the job in the starting rotation of the Boston Red Sox in 2021, who didn't exactly have the strongest starting rotation, but I think he's turned a corner. I really do. He's got a track record of being mostly pretty healthy. He does have a Tommy John under his belt. I believe that was back in 2014 when he had that. But, I mean, he's had 30-plus starts, 30-plus appearances several times in his career. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 times out of his 11 seasons in the big leagues, he's had 30-plus starts, or 30-plus appearances. He had 36 appearances in 2021 and 22 starts that year, 114 innings. So he is durable, and I feel pretty good about that. And his stuff is not that important, and I don't think there's a lot of room for some as significant of regression as a lot of these projections are projecting. Anyway, let's look at the realistic case scenario for all of these guys. Right now, Fangraphs has deGrom projected for, like I said, 172 innings, 5.6 WAR, 2.5 WAR for Jon Gray and Nate Eovaldi. Gray is doing that in 172 innings, and Eovaldi is doing that in 52 innings. They have Martin Perez for 181 innings and a 1.8 WAR and ERA over 4, which just feels really disrespectful, honestly. And Andrew Heaney, they have 133 innings and 2.3 WAR. So I tend to disagree. I think the likely outcome for how this rotation stacks up towards the end of the season, in terms of how at least I view them, whether it's the actual order that they put this rotation in or not, I don't know. But I think in terms of value that you're getting from these guys, I would say deGrom is going to get you the most value. Then Perez, then Eovaldi, then Gray, then Heaney. I again am just so ridiculously impressed that Andrew Heaney, a guy who granted does have his red flags and his concerns, but that this guy is the number 5 in the Rangers rotation. And then if you want to get technical about it, you can look all the way at Jake Odorizzi as your number 6, and like that's insane that the Rangers have Jake Odorizzi as their number 6 starter, a guy who has been a pretty average starting pitcher for his major league career. I mean, in Houston, he was really solid in 2022, and I remember Astros fans just complaining and just whining their heads out. Oh my gosh, it's a freaking Odorizzi day. This guy sucks so bad. Oh my god. And the Rangers would have killed for what Odorizzi was giving what he was giving the Astros last year. Granted, he kind of blew up with Atlanta and was not nearly as productive. But in 12 starts with the Astros, he had a 3.75 ERA in 60 innings and 46 strikeouts. So he was averaging under 3 walks per 9, under a home run per 9. The strikeouts were at 6 per 9, so not anything too crazy. But a 1.03 ERA plus, like giving you 5 innings every time from your number 5 or 6 starter, what he was at that point, like that's really, really solid. And that is super underrated in terms of the depth that he can provide. And I really love the Rangers traded for him. It gives you a lot of peace of mind because, like I've said, like I've gone through with these guys, there is a lot of injury risk in this rotation. Granted, there is in every rotation, but even go further to the number 7 starter, and it's Dane Dunning. And then if you want to go look at the number 8 starter and feel weird about Glenn Otto possibly getting starts for the 2023 Rangers, then you can. But the fact that Glenn Otto's there at number 8 in this rotation as opposed to number 3 or 4 that he was at times last year, I mean, that just really goes to show how much the Rangers improved their depth in this starting rotation, which was by far their biggest hole. I mean, I think if this team had a guy who was giving you Jake Odorizzi like stuff at the very worst in every spot in the rotation last year, like if Odorizzi was the number 4 and 5, if you could clone him and give you 2 Odorizzis that are going out there giving you about 5 innings every start and not going to blow up, but not going to be that great, the Rangers might have been much closer to a 500 team. They might have even been a 500 team, honestly. Like that's how badly they needed that kind of production last year. So I think they really learned from their mistakes of going into camp, and like it was just Martin Perez that they signed. They're like, all right, yeah, everything else is going to be fine. I mean, Spencer Howard's definitely going to work in the rotation. Taylor Hearn's going to definitely work in the rotation. We don't have to worry about, calling up Glenn Otto to make a bunch of starts for us. It'll be fine. And they did. They did have to worry about that. But the depth is just so solid. Granted, there is the volatility, but having those guys back there in your number 6, possibly 7, possibly even 8 starters deep of guys who can go out there and be capable and not terrible, that is an extremely valuable thing to have. I think the offense really didn't get enough credit for how good it was last year and how much it improved. And so just having a competent rotation definitely makes the bullpen miles better, definitely makes the rotation miles better, and the offense is not going to have nearly as much pressure to go out there and drop like 8 runs in like every game that was not started by John Gray or Martin Perez or Dane Dunning when he was at home. Definitely going to be the biggest source of improvement, and I feel very confident in saying this is by far the most the Rangers have ever improved their rotation in any one offseason. And I'm really, really looking forward to seeing it in action. All these guys, not just the Jacob deGrom picks, but the Nathan Eovaldi picks in the Rangers uniform, the Andrew Heaney picks in a Rangers uniform. We've already seen what Perez and Gray look like, but I'm still looking forward to seeing all of those guys. Just some grainy photos and hearing about they're in the best shape of their life. Like I'm so incredibly stoked for it, and stoked for it this season as well. But thank y'all so much for making it Locked On Rangers your first listen every day. Like I said yesterday, we are back to 5 days a week. So yeah, we're back like that until probably around Christmas time. So baseball is back. For your second listen, go check out Locked On MLB Prospects. Host Lindsey Crosby is a prospect encyclopedia going deep on the MLB stars of tomorrow. It is free and available wherever you get your podcast. Thank you all so much for listening and subscribing. And until next time, don't forget to enjoy baseball.